Hello, Detroit and the world. Welcome to another episode of Authentically Detroit, broadcasting live from the Lower East Side of Detroit, powered by the East Side Community Network, sponsored by none other than the Ford Foundation, now a content partner to the new Bridge Detroit publication. I'm Orlando Bailey.
And I'm Donna Givens.
Thank you for listening in and supporting our efforts to build a platform of authentic voices for real people on the East Side of Detroit. We want you to like, rate, and subscribe to our podcast on whatever platform you listen to us on. We drop a new episode every week, so make sure that you turn on those notifications. Today will be a very special, fresh off the press episode where Donna and I will discuss what's in the news. But first, Donna, how was your Father's Day weekend?
It was great. I spent some time with my daughters on Saturday, on Sunday, yesterday on Father's Day. I cooked Kevin a great meal. My father
Hey,
passed away, and so what I did
passed
was
away. I missed that. Who passed
my
away?
dad has passed away.
Okay.
He passed away in 2012.
Yeah.
But I honor, all of the good fathers in my life. I tried to send text messages to as many as I could remember, just to honor and hold up and to celebrate what fatherhood is. So, it's interesting. We have this debate every year about what does Father's Day mean, and are there mothers who should be celebrated as fathers? And I'm of the mindset that we need to hold Father's Day as sacrosanct, the holiday to celebrate Black men who deserve celebration in America and don't always receive it. Not all Black men, just like not all Black women deserve celebration, but Black manhood should be held up as something that is a positive part of all of us.
You know, I saw some research that was released a few years ago. I forget from what research institution or academic institution it was. And what it proved was that Black fathers in America are the most active group of fathers when it comes to being in their child's life consistently in America. So there's this, I would say, myth of Black father absenteeism being more prevalent than what it is,
Yeah.
because I don't think it's true, especially when you look at the fathers of my generation. You know, folks got kids. I'm late in the game. I don't have any, but some of my homies and things have kids, and what I see is something completely different than what is believed by the masses around Black fatherhood. What do you think?
I think that there are many, many good Black fathers. I think that it's largely dictated by where you live and what are the other conditions in your world. So also this weekend, I started reading Yusuf Shakur's book,
Yeah.
Go to My Soul, I believe, something like that, where he met his father. His father did parent him sporadically, and then began to really parent him in prison. I haven't gotten to the
Listen,
prison
isn't
part of
that
it,
crazy?
but he speaks to the absence of Black role models. And I think that we don't want to negate the disappearance of Black men in the lives of women and children in our community um, through so many different mechanisms that allow Black men to be disappeared. From the time they're born, Black boys are under some type of assault. And we have to always be conscious and aware of that. Black children, male children, are more likely to be suspended from kindergarten, preschool than any other children in America. And by the time they get into elementary school and middle school, they've already been labeled as being dysfunctional, as being
Yeah.
oppositional, and many of them integrate into systems of injustice. And so when you
I
know
mean,
that's
didn't we
the case,
cover a story last year out of Canton of about charges being brought against a 10-year-old boy playing dodgeball with a classmate and hit another classmate, and they wanted to criminally charge this little boy?
criminalization of Black males, I was just reading today a study that said that until Black males become 10 years old, they are usually regarded as children. But by the time they hit 10 years old, a lot of times they become adultified.
Mhm.
So, but we know that even kindergartners, preschool, Black males get treated differently, and that shows up in how our society functions when you have adults. Black men who have been criminalized and mistreated since the time they were born, and a lot of times are in systems or in situations, whether it's a system that is created on the streets or a system that is created to cage Black men, where a lot of times they're not visible and apparent and available to children or parents. And so I don't want to minimize that there are still today many children that we work with,
Absolutely.
ECN, who don't have fathers in the home. And I want to acknowledge that pain while also acknowledging the fact that it's kind of a class thing, a social class thing. When people have enough wealth, those gaps narrow. So people who have good jobs and people who have found a way to be more functional in American society place a premium on being good dads. And so, you know, when you are sort of integrated into the economy, into the mainstream of America, at that point, it becomes really bad if you don't show up for your kids. You know,
it's like, what's the reason?
Exactly. socially attacked. And I think that we have to acknowledge that we're not a monolith and that there are layers to this and levels to this. And not to say that it's only poor people who end up in the prison system, but we know that poor Black people are the ones overrepresented in so many negative statistics, that wealth sometimes acts as a shield. It's imperfect, but it sometimes acts as somewhat of a shield, so that what I don't want to do is some of us who have more get comfortable with minimizing the experiences of other people.
Of other folks. That's good. But I too want to say happy Father's Day, belated Father's Day to all of the fathers who are being fathers. I spent the weekend playing Father's Day Santa Claus to my family, my cousins, my brothers, everybody, my dad, making sure that they felt love, uncle, making sure that everybody felt loved and seen, because, you know, we can't really gather. We have not gathered. And so just sort of went around driving all over the city of Detroit, dropping off little gifts and trinkets to all the cool dads that are in my life. So that was pretty fun. That was my weekend, driving around. People live some of everywhere: Detroit, Bloomfield, Clinton, and just Southfield. I was all over the place, but it was good. It was good. I had a good time doing it.
It's good. I missed Insecure this week. I was like, what do I entertain
Well,
myself?
you didn't. Yeah, I mean, like the season, it came and went so quickly.
It did. It always does, though. It's actually a longer season than normal.
Right, right.
But you know, we need renewal of Black shows. The Shy came back on, and so
I haven't watched that. Is it good?
Yeah, we enjoy it.
Okay,
we like it.
Okay.
Very nuanced story, very deep. You know, yeah, I enjoy it.
What network is that on?
It's on Showtime.
All right, and is it season 2? Like, tell me about it. What is it about?
I think it's season 3.
Okay.
It is season 3, and it takes place in Chicago. And the scenes and the communities in Chicago, it just really tells the stories of people who live in one neighborhood. There's a lot of layered stories, and it's really told through the eyes largely of children. And so the kids are so cute. You do have adults in there, but the people who are really the center of the story have been the kids. I really
wow. Okay, I'll check it out. But yeah, no more Insecure until whenever, because you know they take forever to come back. Because this last break, it was like a year and some change. I'm like, what is going on?
Yeah,
be busy. All right, guys, it's time for fresh off the press news that we are thinking about. If you have pieces that you want discussed on Authentically Detroit, you can hit us up on our socials at Authentically Detroit on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, or you can email us at authenticallyddetroit@gmail.com. Donna, fresh off the press.
Attorney compares Michigan teen's death at Kalamazoo facility to George Floyd's. That's Miriam Marini of the Detroit Free Press reporting. So wow, this actually happened prior to George Floyd. It happened in April, I believe, of this year.
April 29th.
I'm sorry, what'd you say?
April 29th.
April 29th, where a young man was restrained after he threw a sandwich in the cafeteria. And the staff person put his knee on his chest and was there for 10 minutes, after which point he said, "I cannot breathe." He didn't die right away. He eventually was, no, I'm sorry, they waited 12 minutes after that to call 911, I guess waiting for him to come out of it, while he laid limp and unresponsive. And he ended up in a coma and just passed away. And so the parents are suing. The state has found 10 licensing violations, and the private facility in which he was held is no longer being licensed by the state. But the reality is that this is a teenager who threw a sandwich and died. It's
16 years old.
another example of a Black man doing something which would at most be, at this point, just a timeout or a suspension, or you're in your room. Whoever heard of a teenager throwing food, right?
Right, that's never happened before.
But when a Black teenager throws food, it has the same consequence as a white teenager maybe bringing a bomb to a school. But maybe the white teenager is seen as less threatening and less in need of containment than that Black teenager who threw a sandwich. It's sickening. And what it speaks to me is just the ubiquitousness of violence against Black male bodies. This concept that Black male bodies must be restrained at all costs. And this happened, and this was in the news before George Floyd was killed. Before we saw it on the news, we actually saw videos of this. I saw a video of this. I actually remember refusing to watch the video, so I saw the video, but I didn't watch it because I knew I could not emotionally handle. I don't watch those snuff films anymore because they are too emotionally devastating. But think about this. We knew about this in April. I saw it on the news, many other people did, and we said, that's terrible. We got really, really angry, and we did nothing. And so to me, the George Floyd was when we lit the match and everything just exploded because it's been going on for so long.
There are a few things that strike me when we talk about this story. This happened in Kalamazoo at a Center for Teens, Lakeside Academy, and the Free Press article acknowledges that Lakeside Academy had to terminate at least 8 employees because of improper use of restraints or failure to utilize de-escalation techniques. And so I wonder what is the state's policy or Lakeside Academy's policy actually around, culture? Like, what is the culture there at Lakeside Academy where they've had to terminate employees, at so many employees in such a short amount of time? My second question as I think about this is the amount of time that the Kalamazoo County prosecutor is taking in investigating this. So I want to be clear that this is a state attorney. This is this young man's a state attorney suing. This is not criminal proceedings brought on by the people of the state of Michigan that would have been represented by the prosecutor or Michigan's Attorney General, Dana Nessel. This happened April 29th. Here we are in June, and this is still under investigation, where this lawsuit is alleging that the staff person held his full weight on this teenager's body, and this teenager goes into cardiac arrest and he passes away. What needs to happen for the state to step in and say, hey, this is ridiculous. We need to bring criminal proceedings up against Lakeside Academy and its staff,
right,
and bypass this Kalamazoo prosecuting attorney?
Well, it's actually the person who's bringing, right, because it's the attorney representing the estate of the young man. Jonathan Marco is representing the state of Cornelius Fredericks. And so he's bringing the lawsuit against Lakeside Academy, and the state will probably be involved because the state basically had a contract with them, and you can't be immunized against that, or what's the term? Not immunized, but the state maintains liability in a situation like that, I believe, because the state entered into a contract. Indemnified, thank you. Indemnified, immunized. So I'm thinking of COVID-19. But you can't be indemnified under those circumstances. But I think it's important to understand that when that person did that, if a private citizen had done that, if his parents had done that, they'd be in prison. But the fact that a staff person did that to a child means that they are not even being criminally charged. The first thing that should happen is criminal charges against the person who had his knee on his chest. And we know who that was. Secondly, the facility that allowed that should be held accountable. And it looks like the state has cut ties with them. But I worked in, I feel like I'm a professional vagabond. I've worked in so many different types of social justice and um, community
Yeah.
services. But one of my jobs was at a girls' home. And this was for girls who had been taken out of their home because of abuse and neglect. The way that they were dehumanized is something that's never left me. These were children who were abused and neglected by their parents and entered into a system that further abused and neglected them. The question is, why doesn't anybody get at the root causes of why this young man threw that sandwich in the first place? What happens to a young person who has behavioral issues?
That he has
Is
that
it
he
a mental
go
health
to this
cause?
kind of
Because
facility.
of his mental health, is he getting the treatment he needs?
All right.
Is it an emotional health? Is there some type of abuse and trauma that needs to be addressed? Because if there's abuse and trauma, he needs treatment. Instead, a lot of times we put these kids in strict discipline environments where the focus is on training them to be better people without addressing the underlying conditions and causes. And that's something that is done more often with Black kids than it is with white kids. It's like if you look at special education, how special education is administered, um, the Black kids are overrepresented as having oppositional defiance disorders or low intelligence, and white kids are getting diseases where you recognize that they have this, they may have ADHD, or they may have some other disease which has a specific type of treatment and intervention. So at the root cause, why was he here in the first place? What was being done for him in the first place? Or is this a pre-prison that ended up terminating his life too soon? Because if you have a staff person behaving like a prison guard, we have a problem.
It sounds like. And this problem, I want to reiterate that this is a perpetual problem at this Lakeside facility. I do, before we move,
And
want to read.
can I just say real quickly though, it's a perpetual problem in juvenile justice
Here.
centers in America. I don't know about the world, as well as in out-of-home placements for abuse and neglect. It is a persistent problem for children who are wards of the state. The state is not taking care of children, and our Black children are overrepresented.
And it's violent. Michigan Department of Health and Human Services released a statement, and it says MDHHS continues to mourn the loss of this young man's life, which came needlessly to an end at the hands of those meant to care for him. In a prepared statement, they said, "We are committed to protecting children and will not accept the completely unnecessary death of a youth who was deprived of the opportunity to grow up, complete his education, begin a career, and start a family." So that is the quote that the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services issued to in response of this outcry.
That's beautifully written by an attorney, but the reality is that if Black lives matter and these children's lives matter, we need systemic change in our juvenile justice systems. And pulling this aside and saying this child didn't have their chance to live their life. What are the outcomes of children who go through their facilities? How many of them graduate from high school?
Yeah.
How many of those who
Show
graduate
me the
from high school
numbers.
matriculate successfully into our society? And how many of them are warehoused and mistreated by underpaid staff and under-supervised and under-monitored placements? I worked in a center in the early 1990s where I didn't work inside of the residential center. I worked in a building next door.
Mhm.
And I went in one day, and when I walked in, they immediately swooped me into the office and locked the doors because one of the residents, a young woman, was behaving violently and throwing furniture around and whatever. And so she was subjecting every other child in that home to violence because she was having, having some type of emotional breakdown, mental breakdown. So the staff protected themselves behind locked doors while leaving her out there. But then when they were done, they opened the doors and they accused the other girls of letting her influence their behavior. They accused them of not having good moral fiber. They would refer to them in very disrespectful ways. And my issue was, why aren't we doing more to A, protect the other girls in this home, and B, to intervene to address the emotional behavior or the needs of this young lady who's acting out that way. And, these were children. So it's upsetting, but it's a systemic issue. And this death to me represents something much bigger than just one kid.
I know that's right. I know that's right. Whew. Well, fresh off the press, Michigan, one of 3 states on track to contain COVID-19. Cases are steadily decreasing. This is by Teresa Valdez at the Detroit Free Press. And, there's been a lot of debate back and forth on the strictness of Governor Whitmer's lockdown orders. The jokes have been flying ever since, big Gretch, don't play. A court, I think today or yesterday, ruled that gyms can reopen, but she's going to fight that. She's not ready to allow gyms and fitness centers to reopen. But it looks like we are on track to contain COVID-19 along with New York and New Jersey. But it hasn't been an easy fight. It hasn't. The Michigan legislature has fought this governor on every hand with tons and tons of lawsuits. I know that Governor Whitmer is also, warning us that the crisis is not over, that the pandemic is still here, and we need to act as if it is. We can't, let down our guards. And so this is a bit of good news, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's, as one who belongs to one of the highest risk groups in the state of Michigan, given age and race and location, it's scary.
That's why we're not back in the studio yet. Donna refuses.
We're not. As somebody who, because the reality is Black people in Detroit are not only getting infected, but also are getting more sick than many other people who experience the virus. And so, I think that when you go through places like Detroit, what you see is a lot of compliance. You see a lot of people wearing masks when you go to stores because we are very conscious of the risk factors.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm really happy to see that we've been able to bring that down. It's ridiculous when I see Republicans and others who are criticizing the governor for what's happening inside of nursing homes and implying that somehow her policies and her lack of action has led to deaths inside of congregate care facilities, because we know that when people are in congregate care, the infection rate is going to be high regardless of what the disease is.
Look at the prisons. Hey,
it's happened everywhere in America, but somehow saying, somebody said that the governor should have been willing to put some of the seniors who were infected in field hospitals like at Cobo Center. And I don't know if any of these people are aware of just how much care and the kind of resources that are needed to provide care to senior citizens inside of nursing homes. But you can't just put them in a bed and leave them there. They need to have much more support than they would receive in that kind of facility. And so what she did was close off wings and move them into wings to separate them and require that. Michigan could do a better job tracking adult foster care homes, but that's certainly not something that Governor Whitmer put in place. So I think that people are picking at threads to try to find a way to discredit her response. But
all day people are mad.
They are mad at her. And but the proof is in the pudding, and I commend the governor for that thing. Now I'm not going to give her Buffy's, but
no, she would not. Buffs, Donna.
No, you know what? I looked it up, and Buffy's are the other. I'm gonna look it up and challenge you. I throw down this challenge because I thought it was, and I did fact check. Some people call them both.
Who calls them both? No, I've never.
I'm going to fact check you later, and we're going to bring it back next week.
Okay.
See if I have it wrong.
We're on record, and I cannot wait to hear Donna say that she was wrong.
I cannot wait either. But anyway, there are a number of issues, and we always have to hold our political figures accountable and not put them on a pedestal where we begin worshiping people, because every person who's elected to office needs to be held accountable for everything they do while in office.
And I want to remind folks that it's still here. Also, in this same article, the number of coronavirus cases in Michigan has reached 60,393, with 5,792 reported deaths. Those are the deaths that are reported. That includes 204 new cases, just the numbers are saying just last Wednesday, and 2 new deaths, according to michigan.gov/coronavirus. And so this is something that is still with us. And I'm seeing people just, I'm scared, I'm out, no mask, gathering, the whole line. It's like, y'all, this is not over. It's so American of us to just decide when a pandemic is like, look, we're going to do it. To jumpstart the economy and reopen the economy and get people spending money at the expense of their lives. Come on, guys, it's still here. It's still a problem, and we can keep it contained if we continue to move thoughtfully and carefully.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
well, when all is said and done, I will have a collection of masks, color coordinated.
I need one for every outfit. Because they're going to be a part of our outfits from here on out for a long time. It seems I needed to match. Me. How I go down. Yeah, so, and then maybe one day when my economic social register, I climb up the economic social register, I'll be able to wear the mask with some buffies, as you call them. Donna, fresh off the press.
Michigan McKinnon. It's time to restructure police departments so that they truly protect and serve. Wow, that was so really powerful.
This is really something.
There's this few bad apples mindset of policing that police unions and others try to push on us every time there's a police killing. And yet every time there's a police killing, police officers and police unions help to cover up and protect those who've killed other people and demonize the people that they killed.
Look at what's happening in Atlanta. They're not showing up. They mad because they can't get away with murder.
Did you see that something like 600 New York police officers are planning to step down? I was really excited. I was like, that's one way to fund them. You know what? Stop spending money on them just to replace them.
Stop. If you can't, you mad because you can't get away with murder. That's so asinine to me. It makes absolutely no sense. In New York and Atlanta, this officer shot this man dead in a Wendy's parking lot.
Yeah. So in 1957, he says he was a freshman at Cass Tech and he was walking home after speaking with his favorite teacher. 4 white police officers jumped out of their cruiser, threw him against it, and beat him severely. He hadn't done anything wrong. This was the Big 4. We knew what they were. So that day, he promised to become a police officer himself. And as a rookie officer, he was treated he was denigrated and treated with racism. A lot of white officers refused to ride with him or put dividers up. They used Lysol to disinfect seats where Black officers sat and used the N-word with abandon. And during the 1967 rebellion, 2 white officers pulled him over while he was in uniform. They, thinking they pointed a gun in his head and said, "Tonight you're going to die," before discharging their weapon. He drove back into his vehicle, and miraculously managed to escape. Think about this. He could have been killed in 1967 as a police officer wearing a badge with his own gun. And then as a supervisor, he tried to discipline police officers who were mistreating people in the streets, and he was corrected by his supervisor and by the union. And so his saying, look, this is not a new issue. It's not a slight issue. This is a systemic problem that can only be fixed with restructuring. To have the former police chief of the city of Detroit make this argument, the former deputy mayor of the city of Detroit make this argument, I'll tell you what, I have never wished he was deputy mayor right now, right at this moment, more than I did when I read that article, because right now we're hearing nothing of that coming out of our current police chief or mayor. But it was a very strong argument. He spoke with a great deal of credibility and identified with many people, and I just really loved it.
I mean, he even spoke about when he was actually police chief and being pulled over by a white officer, and going through the motions, and complied, and he didn't let him know who he was, and the white police officer recognized him eventually. Like, this is something that even uh, black police officers or a black police chief can't escape. What does that say about the culture, the ingrained culture of policing throughout America in the North, South, East, and West? This isn't just a Southern thing. This just doesn't happen in the South. This has happened and is happening all over these United States. And you have a former deputy mayor, a former police chief saying that it is time to restructure the way we do policing in this country. And my question is, why is that a debate? Why is it a debate when we have case after case after case of over policing, overuse of excessive force, the hunting of Black bodies, both men and women? And when we say that it's time to reimagine and restructure the police from its root, that's a debate. I, for the life of me, cannot understand.
Well, I think, oh, go on, sorry.
I, for the life of me, cannot understand why. And when we think about the bill that was passed in Breonna Taylor's name, but these officers are still walking free. Like, there's this thing on social media, like, oh, it's such a beautiful day to arrest the police officers who killed Breonna Taylor. Oh, happy Father's Day. What a great day it is to arrest the officers who killed Breonna Taylor. What is happening in this country, right? So we get these quick fixes that fixes maybe the branch of an overall dead tree. And we need to pluck this dead tree up.
I think we're going to have a conversation and get at what is the purpose of policing? And is the criminal justice system doing what it was established to do, or is it broken? Is the idea that you can beat them and it would have been okay to immobilize George Floyd like that as long as he didn't die? Maybe he was just paralyzed, or as long as the pain was not permanent. I mean, we live in a nation that tolerates and actually encourages police abuse. We live in a nation where our Supreme Court made it possible through an Ohio versus Perry decision for police officers to stop and frisk people, knowing that there was going to be a disproportionate impact on Black people. And maybe the thing that hurt me the most was reading that in 1968, Thurgood Marshall voted on the side of the majority that it was okay for police officers to stop and frisk when they had a suspicion against somebody. And so I think in many people's eyes, the brutality against Black men, harassing against Black men, the militarization of Black communities is not the problem. The problem is sometimes they go too far. And when you've accepted as a norm, brutalizing Black men to keep them in check because Black men can't be trusted because Black men are violent, and that's your thinking, then you only want to fix that part of the system that is broken, and that is, oops, they died. And that is sometimes not even seen as a bigger problem as, some of the other things we have here. So I think that in my mindset, the reason we're not changing it is because we don't value Black lives in the same way that we value white lives. If it was a white person being killed at the rate that Black people are, if you saw a police officer, watch a Black police officer put his knee on the neck of a white person who was accused of maybe having passed a $20 counterfeit bill, and see what the reaction would be. But because these systems tend to have a disproportionate impact on people who are not valued in our society, it just continues. And that's the reason why we've got to center, in my opinion, our protests around the value of Black lives, and not just living, but also being valued and treated like citizens, being
Citizens.
upgraded
There's so
from
much violence.
subject to citizens. Your Black life and your pursuit of happiness, your life, liberty,
It
and pursuit of
matters.
happiness matters,
That's right.
not the
Because
fact
in
of your.
this city, we've seen so much violence beyond physical force of violence or that kind of thing, but economic violence, um, foreclosure violence, environmental violence, all things that disproportionately affect the Black lives, the Black majority that lives in this city. And one of the things that was, just interesting to me that I began to think about, just in the Michigan legislature as well as the federal legislature, look at the makeup of these chambers of Congress. Look at the makeup of the chambers of the Michigan House and Senate. It's not reflective of what the larger American society looks like. Why isn't anyone saying anything about that? You know what I mean? And so you and I were having a discussion about it's going to take so many different things to change these structures, including voting. Voting is one thing, it's not the end all be all, but we have so much work to do. And it is infuriating to me that the United States Congress is still made up a large majority of old rich white men. How is that possible? How is that still possible in 2020? How are these systems still enduring with a browning country in 2020?
That's white supremacy doing what white supremacy is supposed to do, and that is replicating and power, across generations. I'm reading Andre Perry's book. I have all these books I'm reading. For a while, I stopped reading. Now I'm just this, I'm reading a lot. And in Andre Perry's book, he talks about how we normalize whiteness and how there are studies. This one study that showed that a rich white father and a rich Black father could have very similar circumstances, but the male offspring of the rich white father was much more likely to be rich than, and the offspring of the Black male was much more likely to be poor. And the question was, what's wrong with Black people? That's how we center our data. And he said, we need to flip that and ask ourselves, how is it that white supremacy is continuing to elevate and work on behalf of white males, such as they could come from the exact same environment and end up in a different place? And I think if we center our analysis around the lived experiences of Black people and not white motivations, we can say, how is it that our systems of injustice continue to perpetuate themselves? And I don't know that it's by having people who look like us on the police force or in the legislature or in, or as judges or as prosecutors, because we can see injustice perpetuated by people who are African American. In fact, a lot of studies show that Black police officers are more likely to kill Black people than white police officers are.
That goes without saying, and that's just how powerful the system is. That you can have Black and brown mouthpieces and actors that perpetuate this system of oppression baked into white supremacy. But it is still mind-boggling.
But it raises the question of how can we intentionally disrupt these systems of white supremacy? How we have to be intentional about it. You can't just put a representative in there. You have to put a representative in there with a plan, with a vision, with an understanding of what's happening, or they will just be in there replicating the same old thing. Because rich people don't go to Congress. In a lot of instances, people go to Congress and become rich. Mitch McConnell was not a rich man going to Congress, and he is one of the wealthiest Americans right now, having gone to Congress. And so what are the forces that work to corrupt representation, to corrupt thinking, and how do we push back? And I think that's where it's ordinary citizens really holding our public officials accountable and not allowing them to just represent us without our continued input and oversight over their work.
Yes, there has to, I think all too often, folks get elected and they lose their connection to the people that the policies that they are enacting and working on is going to affect either advantageously or adversely, we have to maintain that connection to the streets, especially with constituents who fit within marginalized groups in our city and in our state. Period. Period. We can't get so big in our britches and so powerful that we excuse that kind of behavior. I need to make sure that I see you outside of election time. And that has been the complaint and cry of people for so long. Politicians come around when they're trying to get elected. And that's it. You can't contact, that's my story. You can't get in contact with somebody in the legislature after election time to get them to respond to an issue that that you may be having. That structure, that culture has to change. And
It does,
so,
but I have a question to ask you, Orlando.
yeah,
What is the Black agenda?
I to be determined. To be determined. I think what what occurs to me in the current movement is the Black agenda would have so many different tenets because there isn't, and I think this is intentional, a bona fide leader of this movement, right? There are multiple leaders in this movement, and Black people aren't monolithic. So I think that there has to be a coalescing of all of these folks working in social justice, all of these folks who are marching to, come to a neutral table and figure out what that agenda is. It's to be determined. I don't know what it is, and I'm not even going to camp and say that we need a visible leader. I think what's happening right now is happening because intentionally, without a Martin Luther King figure or a Malcolm X figure. I think that's the way that young people who are at the helm of this movement is feeling. So how do we document the grievances and the demands of all of these movements in various cities and create some sort of a super PAC, especially now that it's election year, and have this president, whoever the president becomes, hopefully it's Vice President Joe Biden, prayerfully it's Vice President Joe Biden, to hear these grievances. We put money to help fund that agenda and, make him owe us once he's elected. But I don't know who has that neutral table and a voice to call all of these movements together to formulate this agenda. It's a great question.
Well, I think that what we needed to be able to integrate lunch counters and to be able to sit in the front of a bus was a charismatic leader who could push a power campaign and say, we want to be able to sit at lunch counters and drink out of the same water fountains and in these things, right? Mm-hmm. But the more complex the issues, the less effective those types of movements are. When I look at Martin Luther King, he started off and he was just pushing for civil rights. But as he got to housing, he went to Chicago.
Once he got to economic stuff,
couldn't figure out what to do about housing because housing is such a complex system. And then he moved on to poverty, and God bless him, he was pushing against something that had so many tentacles in so many parts of America. And I think that that's where charisma kind of runs its course. Yeah. I think that you need to buttress charisma with data, with systems analysis, and with some specific recommendations, and then have people pushing for that. So when I see movements like defund the police, that's a specific call to action. I know you don't like the term, and because it causes misunderstanding.
Yes.
That's but my on the other hand, it's kind of like a term. I get it, but people have the ability to understand complex things, and it's been explained by many people.
But why don't we call it what it should be? Why don't we just call it?
I
Something
think
else.
there's the argument that if you call it what it should be, will be more easily accepted, and people will just move quickly to it. We could even call it police reform, right? But
Hmm.
when we talk about police reform, it's let's have registries of police officers who beat and kill people, or it is let's I mean, Bernie Sanders and um, Joe Biden think we need to pay off police officers more money and they'll be nicer or something like that. I don't know. I think that the reality is that defund the police is provocative and in your face in the same way that Black Lives Matter is provocative and in your face, and we're going to have to provoke some people if we're going to get change. So I'm not opposed to the concept, because I think that what we really have to do, though, is arrive at a shared definition of what that means so we can all be pushing at the same thing. Because
Yes,
it's not what you call
because
it, it's
all
what
over the
you're
place.
pushing for. And if you peel back the layer, some people are saying, let's just abolish policing completely. And some people are saying, let's dramatically cut the amount of money spent on policing.
Right.
And those are different conversations. And so I'm for dramatically reducing the amount of money spent on policing, because I believe if the roots, you have to go to root causes of whatever the issues are.
Hmm.
If the root cause of violence is a lack of criminal enforcement, then more police is going to fix it.
Well, that's what is to be believed.
If more police on the street prevent crime, show me evidence that policing prevents crime. If police officers even do a good job investigating crime, how many people's crimes are solved? We had the 11,000 solved rape kits, but how many break-ins are solved? How many carjackings are solved? And how many cases are just permanently unsolved?
Show me the numbers.
If we look at prevention, prevention is not something that police officers are capable of providing.
Or
Crime
trained to
prevention means
provide.
changing people's
Absolutely.
behavior.
That's
It's
right.
behavior change.
That's
It is
right.
reducing the proximal cause. What causes people to act out? We know that trauma is such a big issue inside of our communities on so many levels. I
Uh,
would even hazard
Poverty
a
is
guess
traumatic.
that the
Lack of
young man
access.
at the Lakeside Correctional Facility, that we could trace his violence to trauma, right?
Hmm.
There was trauma in his life. So that means not just more social workers, because everybody says more social workers. Who closed all the mental health facilities? We don't even have good mental health treatment in our community
Thank you,
that's
Governor Engel.
accessible, that is, that provides residential treatment for those people who need actual treatment. So let's look at the proximal causes. And I think if we look at trauma being a cause, if we look at the breakdown of the family being the cause, then we have to ask ourselves, how does our prison industrial complex feed the breakdown of a family? If we look at the breakdown of the
That's
family
right.
as being a cause, we have to ask ourselves how housing insecurity feeds the breakdown of a family.
That's right.
If
If you
we
look at
look at,
absent fathers, how is prison a symptom of fathers being absent in the home? Come on.
and,
Yes.
and increasingly fathers and mothers, and
Yes.
how does us treating drug use and drug possession by Black people as a crime and
Come
by
on.
white people as a sickness
It's a sickness.
contribute to a different response in our government that contributes to, therefore, different outcomes? So I think we need to interrogate the issues and really try to understand what they are so that we can form a Black agenda. What do we think will really work to fix what's happening inside of our communities, and then push for that? And it's going to mean dramatic reforms, not tinkering around the edges around these things. And it also has to mean the creation of rights, that Black Lives Matter, therefore Black people have these rights, and we need to reassert what those rights are. There was a study done by, I believe his name is Rappaport, John Rappaport was
Hmm.
talking about this on a show. He's in Chicago, and he was talking about the study that was done to evaluate what happens when you give police officers more power. How do they behave differently? And in every instance, what they found is that when you gave them more power, they were more violent. They used more violence against Black people. There were more instances of police conduct when you opened up the power. And so we really need to police policing a little bit more thoroughly and rein in a lot of
Surveil the
power.
police. Come on now.
And
Sheesh.
then finally, I think that I've been spending a lot of time just thinking about something, and that is that policing is a public institution, right?
Yes, we pay for it.
Schools are a public institution.
We pay for it.
Prisons are a public institution.
We pay for it.
And public employees have formed unions. The
Mhm.
unions that public employees form in these institutions, especially with policing and schools, as I know, I don't know about others, but in policing and schools, go a lot further than the unions that say are the UAW,
Mhm.
which says this is how much people are going to get paid. These are generalized working conditions, that kind of thing.
Mhm.
But in policing unions decide what police are allowed to do, whether or not they can lose their jobs, and they
Their
really
disciplinary
help to
action.
define
Yep.
what policing looks like.
And
A
I
an
can I
auto
just stick a pin right here really quickly to say that uh, uh, the police union in the city of Detroit, uh, they had a contract with the city of Detroit that ended last year, and I have not been able to locate the newest contract. Their last contract lasted for, I think, 4 years and it ended in 2019. I would love to see what the new 2020 up to 2024 contract looks like. I have not been able to locate it, but keep going. And it has in there disciplinary steps or actions that are determined by uh, the union. It
Yeah,
is it's really interesting.
yes. So I think that, to the extent that auto unions don't determine what a car looks like, how a car drives, how cars function. What they determine is what workers are allowed to do. Now, if an auto union says we're not going to put bumpers on cars because
We don't want to.
that's against our union contract and we shouldn't have to do that, you'd have an issue with that. But when we have police unions saying we're not going to allow these things to take place or people to be punished in this way because for whatever reason this is against the rights of our members, now you have a different type of problem. And so I think that we've got to abolish police unions as they are, or restructure them such that they can only focus on a number of things and get them out of the business of deciding what's in policing. When I think back, I think about teachers' unions and how teachers' unions sometimes created a brick wall when people in the community were trying to improve teaching and education in communities. This is a time long ago before school choice when parents were trying to effect change and community members were trying to effect change, and you kept hearing, no, the unions won't allow that.
Mm,
Defunding schools really weakened teachers' unions to the extent that reforms are now possible. And the other thing that happened is that federal legislation changed, or federal incentives and federal funding changed how education was delivered, where you had now teachers have to be held accountable and you have teacher accountability mechanisms that are in place. Those are by no means perfect. What it has done is it's opened the window up for changes to take place inside of education.
yeah.
Am I happy with everything that's happened? No. But do I remember what it was like when teachers felt like they did not have to be responsive to the needs of parents and community? Yes.
Mm,
And I think we need to use all of these same kinds of mechanisms to restructure policing. And our politicians need to be at every table really demanding substantive change, not tinkering.
yes, I agree. I agree. Well, that's a wonderful analogy. That tension with the teachers union must have been before my time, but that's really interesting, and it's really interesting to hear. Wow. Uh, Last story, fresh off the press. Detroit joins the Black Lives Matter street mural movement. This is Louis Aguilar from Bridge Detroit reporting. So there is a new mural in Spirit Plaza here in the city of Detroit, and it says "Power to the People." There were no public dollars spent on this mural. The mural cost around $12,000, and it was financed by the Knight Foundation, Bedrock, Eastern Market Corporation, Motor City Paint, Murals in the Market, General Motors, Mint Artists Guild, University Prep, and Hubert Massey. Hubert Massey is also beloved artist here in the city who led the construction, the erecting of the Power to the People mural. Yeah, so there's your information on it. Donna?
It's interesting to me. You have Black people all across the globe fighting Black Lives Matter and holding up signs that say Black Lives Matter. You have white people coming into places like Detroit and going into every city in America holding up signs saying Black Lives Matter because they understand what's happening in this moment is the need to sanctify the value of Black lives. Now you have some people pushing back, all lives matter. Why single out Black people when all people matter, as if that's the question. But Black Lives Matter ends up being the central organizing premise of this movement, and it is absolutely disappointing to me that in the Blackest city in America, the poorest city in America, one of the poorest large big city in America, and one of the most violent big cities in America, we cannot state with pride that Black Lives Matter in Detroit. In a city where we've had water shutoffs and we've had wide-scale foreclosures from the tax bills, and you have really, really imbalanced investment in neighborhoods. Black people want to know we matter.
Yeah,
And
dangerous determinants of health in certain areas of the city.
We have had a
ton of violence
disproportionate number of people, Black lives, die from COVID-19.
in our
Black
city.
pastors have died from COVID-19. And Black parents and grandparents and young people. And so for our political establishment to decide to water down that message with power to the people is offensive to me. And
I
it's
don't think it resonates. It's not the quote, it's not the movement that is happening right now. The Power to the People movement, to me, is misplaced in 2020. That's a movement of the 60s. It's not something that we use in 2020. And so I think that why is there reluctance to just say Black Lives? Why can't we say Black Lives Matter in the most basic sense? Why can't we?
Why could our mayor not call out the fact that Black people were dying at a higher rate of COVID-19 than other people in the nation? Where has the mayor been talking about that issue? Where has the mayor been when people have talked about race issues and people have talked about the fact that there are two Detroits? He has been very slow to recognize. He has got a very colorblind way of leading the city. And it's misplaced, it's out of touch with where people are in America. And frankly, it's offensive to me. I think that there is this preference to not call out Blackness, as though Blackness in Detroit was always treated like an embarrassment. Detroit was the Blackest big city. And when white people started coming back, Detroit was perceived as coming back, because now white people were here. And so Black Lives Matter seems to belong to cities where Black people don't have as much visibility. I don't know. I just think that Black lives are taken for granted here. I think that, the way oppression happens in Detroit might be different than the way it happens in other communities, because you have so many Black people who are interwoven into the business and political establishment here, and who are contributing sometimes to the marginalization of Black people. And so sometimes what is happening is that Black voices from the hood, from places we represent, are not always the ones that are being represented in corridors of power here. And this disconnect does not necessarily happen in some other communities. I mean, in DC, the mayor of DC was able to really strongly say Black Lives Matter and to create Black Lives Matter Plaza. But you have to keep in mind, Donald Trump is there. And so you have this foil to organize against. In Detroit, you have this need to sort of say, well, we don't want to scare off white people by pushing this Black Lives Matter narrative, when we still want them to come and save our city. At least that's how I interpret it. We don't want them to feel unwelcome, even though the exact same political powers that refuse to say Black Lives Matter criticize white people who came here with banners saying Black Lives Matter because they were not from Detroit. So I
I
don't.
want to read this quote by the Director of Arts and Culture for the Office of Arts and Culture here in the city, by her Rochelle Riley. She was a guest on Authentically Detroit just a couple of episodes ago. And this is exactly what she said. This mural isn't political. This is about empowerment. For the first time, people around the world are hearing the cry for justice in the US that's been going on for so long, Riley said. We want to live the best way we can, and that includes everyone. Power to all people. But we're not having a conversation about all people. All people aren't being disproportionately affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. All people are not being hunted by white vigilantes and police and being shot dead in the streets on video. That part is what is most offensive to me. So even if you did say power to the people and you left that up for interpretation, you felt the need to clarify power to all the people. It's such a disappointment.
And around the world, this is what people are responding to. They're responding to Black Lives Matter. In the United Kingdom, Black people are standing up and saying, Black Lives Matter. In France, Black people are standing up and saying, Black Lives Matter. In Germany, Black people are standing up and saying, Black Lives Matter. In Australia, Black people are standing up and saying, Black Lives Matter. In Iraq, Black people stood up and said, Black Lives Matter, because Black life has been devalued across the globe. And this is not a fight for justice. This is a fight for Black rights. This is
and it's not a new fight.
The diaspora. It's not a new fight, but this is a fight that has come back to the surface against the devaluation of Black life, against the rise of racism. So to water it down and confuse the messaging, to pretend like this is the first time that Black lives have mattered outside the US. Remember, Paul Robeson traveled all over the world, spreading messages of Black Lives Matter in the 1940s, before he was banned from traveling and representing the United States because it was considered un-American because he was criticizing racism in the United States. When the 1960s happened and Martin Luther King was leading his movements, and you had the Panthers and others, people in Ireland and other places in the world were looking at the United States as a place where they could see social justice roll out, as an example to emulate.
I heard that in Germany.
This is the first time there has been a unified effort around Black lives is simply ahistorical. It's not true, and it's very disappointing that that's coming out. It's a Black Lives Matter message because Black people the world over, and rather than us joining in on that message, we've got to reframe it for Detroit and say all people matter. And all people matter.
John Lennon.
All people matter just doesn't work for me. I was just reading this other article, and it was talking about the Black Power movement. It said that the Black Power was not peripheral, it was mainstream. And its ideas caught on like wildfire. By 1968, Black Power had effectively replaced civil rights as the dominant ideological concept among a majority of Black youth and significant portions of the Black working and middle class. And yet people often perceive Black Power as a mutation of civil rights, a kind of extremism, condemnable but understandable, which arose in response to the intransigence of the US government. The story we are often told is that a loud minority of civil rights leaders lost their patience and became the Black Power advocates. When you look at the Kerner Commission report, the Kerner Commission report said in 1968, white society is deeply implicated in the ghetto. White institutions created it. White institutions maintain it, and white society condones it. Unless these factors were addressed, the report concluded rights in Black ghettos would become a permanent feature of American society.
And
now, that
LBJ shelved it. He shelved the Kerner report.
And now here we are in 2020, trying to decide whether race is the salient feature of power and justice in our community. And it
And we know it
simply
is.
is the salient feature. Everybody realizes who it is. And I really hope that the political powers that be in the city of Detroit are willing to speak a Black Lives Matter message.
I think you put a button on that very eloquently. Black Lives Matter. Wow.
And if Black Lives Matter, here's the deal. If racism is institutionalized and Black Lives Matter, we're going to have to do a lot of work to disrupt the institutions that maintain racism and the systems that house racism. It's not going to be a law, a bill. It's not going to be a cute set of murals or a statement by a corporation. We've got
It'll
to
be monumental.
disrupt those patterns that create racism. And I've never been more encouraged than I am right now when you look at the New York Times bestseller list and it looks like my bookshelf and then some. White
Yeah, yeah.
Fragility is #1 on the New York Times bestseller list,
How
and
to be
it
an
really helps
anti-racist. Yes.
how to be an anti-racist, because I think people are finally at a point where they really want to understand what this means, so that we get beyond the superficial and we get beyond the comfortable and we do things that are uncomfortable, like have a white mayor in the largest Black city in America say Black Lives Matter. His primary constituency, most of the people who he represents right now are Black. And it's not that revolutionary. And I really hope he can rise to the occasion.
That wraps up our Fresh Off the Press segment. If you have topics that you want discussed on Authentically Detroit, you can hit us up on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Authentically Detroit, or email us at authenticallydetroit@gmail.com. Donna, it's been a long time since it was just you and I. This was good.
Yes.
This was good. We love our guests. We really do. But I think this was really needed. Do you have shout outs before we close out?
You know, I do.
Come on, what you got?
I wanted to shout out to our friend, Charlonda Buckman, for pulling together a Detroit Public Schools march on Black Lives Matter. And I think attracting about 3,000 people there, which was more than anybody expected. I think that really having the Detroit Public Schools stand on the right side of history.
That was great.
Was a great thing, and I'm very proud of her. You know, she is a person who came out of Eastside Community Network as a child and then as an employee.
Everybody did.
Yes, but Charlonda came as a teenager like you, and then as an employee. So that's a pathway that not everybody has traveled. You and Charlonda probably being the best known for having traveled that pathway. But she did a great job with that. She's a community organizer, unparalleled in her skill of getting people out there. And then our own Dylan Brown for his tire poem, which he created for ECN, and actually kicked off the march that Detroit Public Schools held. So I'm very, very proud of Dylan. He's so talented. And he was recently promoted to marketing and communications manager at ECN.
Okay, so Dill.
Have him. Yes.
Manager. Come on, Dill.
So he's going to be using his talents to help spread more messaging about what we want, share more of our messaging.
Donna, tell the people where they can go and hear Dylan's tired poem.
We're going to put it right on our Facebook page. It will be on the Authentically Detroit Facebook page. It is on ECN's Facebook page, but you can, listen to it I'll put it on today after we're done.
Awesome.
And then finally, Black dads. I want to shout out to Black dads. We mentioned that in many instances, Black families, because of racism and because of poverty and a police state and a criminal justice system that really oppresses so many Black people. Some communities do not have as many Black fathers represented as, even the fathers would like to be, and the families need. But for the most part, Black fathers are outstanding. I think there's research that shows that Black fathers are more involved with their children than other fathers. And Black fathers, to me, are an embodiment of male strength, restraint, empathy, and commitment. When you have a good Black dad, when I used to watch Scandal and I looked at the
Papa
character
Pope,
handle. Hmm?
Daddy Pope.
Daddy Pope, I was like, black dad. Other people need a black dad like that. Just, helping them understand what they expect and being very powerful and at the same time loving. So I think that we always talk about the importance of Black mothers in our culture. We all need Black dads. And my
Yeah.
hats off to the many Black dads who I know, including my fiance, but there are many, many, many who I know and love. And just want to honor today.
Yeah, I want to shout out these 8 guys: Brian, Arthur, Evan, Osby, Keenan, Chris, Dave, Mike, and Brendan, who joined me over the weekend to have a discussion in partnership with Chase Cantrell's Next Steps Together. And Donna, it was a really beautiful space where these Black men were able to gather, speak freely, and freely dream, if but for an hour. And, one of the things that really struck me is the lack of space where Black men particularly, have the freedom to have conversations around their biggest dreams. I asked that question and it was radio silent. Some folks had to really think and then responded in a way that was really compelling, but also saying, no one has ever asked me that before. No one has ever considered what my dreams were. And we were able to support each other and, help each other to, achieve some of their biggest dreams. Talked about, grievances and joy and, all of that. It was really a magical space. So I want to thank those Black men who joined me this past Saturday for the Next Steps Together conversation. I would also like to shout out Jonathan Galloway, AKA JG, AKA the Authentically Detroit producer, who just released some new merch for Audio Wave Network that says, "I am a Black podcaster." Every single podcast on the Authentically Detroit are hosted by Black folk. And so if you want to support the movement happening here at Audio Wave Network, you can go to audiowavenetwork.com and purchase your t-shirt today in support of all of the shows, including ours at audiowavenetwork.com. I also want to give a nod to an old friend, Sebastian Jackson at the Social Club Grooming Code, for actually changing his facade in downtown Detroit to say Black Lives Matter.
Oh,
Not
wow.
far around the corner from
Power
Spirit
to the
Plaza.
people.
So thank you, Bash. We appreciate you. We see you, man, and I'm happy that you guys are back up and running. I know it's been a tough few months, and I know you guys are taking every precaution to keep yourselves as well as the customers at the social club safe. So I wanted to shout you out. That does it for me.
All right.
Good.
Well, shout out Detroit.
Don't make me Millie Rock. Hey. There's no place like it. There is no place like Detroit. Nowhere.
Yep.
Nowhere. And Detroit is everywhere. So yeah, thank you, Donna. Shout out to Detroit. We want to thank you for listening. We will see you next time. Until then, catch the wave.